Hi fellow musicians, my name is Linus Klausenitzer and I'm a touring musician since over 10 years, and I had to struggle with a lot of problems on the road that I don't want you to face as well. So all those mistakes that I made, all the experiences I made, I speak about in this video so you don't need to make the same mistakes as well. If you are packing up for a tour now that you need to fly to, I have a couple of advices for you. Let's kick things off by talking about the most important topic. Of course, it's your instrument that you need to bring. So compared to a local show where you could go with a car or something like that, you need to consider the weight and the size of your instrument, and you want to make sure that your instrument won't be damaged. So you need to think about the right cases. Okay, so let's first talk about basses and guitars. You have basically two options. You could either bring your instrument on board as hand luggage, or you treat it as checked baggage. And this is kind of a complicated topic because every musician has a very own philosophy about it, and really your decision depends on the airline, the rules of the airline, and also on the staff that is working that day and how they interpret the rules of the airline. So often an airline recommends to book an own seat for your instrument, but let's face it, sometimes the cost for another seat is even expensive as the instrument itself if you're not a classical musician. Sometimes the guitars even fit into the restrictions of hand luggage. People with headless guitars, for example, do it like this and have very few problems with airlines. But with normal guitars and especially basses, it's more complicated. So most people take the guitar or the basses on board with a soft case, and there is my problem. If the airline decides when you check in, for example, that this is not a hand luggage piece, then they put it to the normal baggage. And it could even happen that they take away your instrument while you're boarding. So that I also saw happening in the past. And that is why I prefer hard cases that I use as checked baggage. So normally I take a huge case with me where I can put two basses inside, and often there is a space left so I can put clothes between the basses, and that's of course good because somehow I need to get the clothes to where I'm gonna play. And also it adds more safety to the instrument if it's flying around in the case. And when I arrive wherever I need to play, I also prefer to have a hard case there, because then we move on with a van or stuff like that, and I always know my basses are safe. And a lot of hard cases that you can get now, you can even use them at a guitar stand on a festival, for example. But now you might ask yourself why not all people do it? Well, one of the reasons is that people don't trust airlines that much, and of course it can happen that they lose your instrument and that they lose baggage. So that's of course a high risk. Never happened to me, but I heard a lot about other bands that had that problem. So yeah, it's a matter of philosophy and you gotta decide for yourself. And here's a little side fact: if you want to check in your guitar or bass, people used to detune the instrument a lot because it was very cold in the cargo area, and so the tension was very high and sometimes even strings could break, but that was in the past, and somehow the climate in cargo areas is better maintained, so that's not an issue anymore. And here's another little advice if you want to save space. This is the Ibanez multi-tool that I really take on every show with me. It's like a Swiss Army knife, but you can use it for musical instruments, and it helps you if you have a little damage, or if from the flying and all the driving, I don't know, if some screw is loose or something like that, you can fix it with this little tool. I take it to every show I go to. But that's not all the gear you will need. You will need guitar pedals, effects as a guitarist or a bassist, and you will need an amp or a cabinet, but that's not something you bring on a plane. That's something a promoter should provide, or something you should rent for a tour in the country that you fly to. If you use a camper, an XFX or a Helic or something like that, that's way better for flying. It's light, it's normally in a size that you can take it on to a plane. So I really recommend that. Otherwise, I saw some guitarists who, for example, used the camper that a festival offered, and they brought a flash drive to get their own sounds that they created at home on their camper. But sometimes that causes problems. They have a different camper model, a different firmware update that people didn't know about, and then you have an issue. So if it's possible, bring your own stuff that you can rely on and that you feel comfortable with, then you can be sure to have the most relaxed stage atmosphere for yourself. So in my case, I don't want to rely on equipment that is right there at a venue or a festival. I prepared a flight case that is also a pedal board at the same time, which includes all the pedals and all the sounds I need and I want on stage. So I made sure that I get a custom-made case that fits to the size restriction of most of the airlines. And it's a case that I can go on stage to, and I just open the case and just plug it, and then I have the sounds that I like. Okay, let's talk about unexpected problems. So once I took a long cable with me on my hand luggage and the security took it away from me. I don't know, maybe they thought I could strangle somebody with a cable or something like that. So here's my advice: don't bring cables as hand luggage, always put it to your checked baggage. Another issue that you need to think about are batteries. So you have those little 9-volt batteries inside of guitars or pedals. So also think that you need to take that as hand luggage, because that's the only way that's allowed to take it with you. And on my last tour to New Zealand, I had the little problem that I had AAA batteries with me, and they were in a little case, but they were kind of loose, so the endings of those batteries could touch each other, and that was a problem, and they took my batteries away. So really make sure that you have a proper case for your batteries, or just buy batteries in the country that you will play in. I'm not a drummer, but I toured with a lot of drummers, and I saw what they do on flight shows. So if it's not a huge productions, they don't take their own drum kit. It's just too expensive to do. So normally you rent a kit in the country that you play in, and then you bring just the most essential equipment with you that, I don't know, makes you feel comfortable playing, like foot pedals, or they bring a signature sound for your playing, like a special snare or something like that. Oh, and another thing I see most drummers do is bringing their own cymbals. That needs to be a hard case as well, because that's otherwise impossible to transport, and make really sure that that stays under the weight restrictions of the airline. Then you might bring in-ear systems, samplers, a mixing board, and other equipment that needs to be in a big rack or something like that. Make sure that it's a rack that is made for flying. I linked some of them in the description. That is really something that protects your gear. And then also you need to bring personal stuff, obviously, clothes and personal things. And you need to make sure that they are not over the weight limits of the airline. So I always bring a little portable scale. I also take it with me on the road, so I can also make sure that the weight is correct for the flight back. Then make sure to check the travel instructions and restrictions of the country that you fly to. Some countries need a working visa so you can play there. In some countries you need a carnet that lists all the equipment you have for customs, like Switzerland, Australia. There are a lot of countries that require that you might not expect in the beginning, and this can cost a lot of money if you don't follow the rules. So read about it carefully. And another thing that also seems like an obvious thing, but I see a lot of musicians and bands that have the problem that they all arrive at the airport, or some crew member, and they didn't check their passports before, and they are expired, and then they had to miss a couple of shows and needed to pay an extra flight and stuff like that. Sounds ridiculous, but it really happens also for big bands. So I put a reminder on my phone 6 months before all my passports expire, so I can make sure I always have a valid passport. So that's basically it. All the little items I didn't want to talk about are listed in the description of this video. It's a checklist you can put on your phone. I do it myself like that. I go, before every flight show, I go through my checklist and see if I have everything. So if you go on a whole tour, you can also check my other video that I made that tells what you need to take on tour with you. And also there is a checklist that you can simply copy and use it. And if you have a travel experience yourself with your instrument, please put it in the comments below. I would be happy to read about it. Other than that, please hit the subscribe button to support me if you like the video and if you want to know more about musician tips. Until next time.